Every once in a while you encounter one or two pricks that deal magic damage and have a very long range. You try to farm safely, but they just won't leave you alone, and no matter how hard you try to catch them, they always have a way to escape your fingertips at the most crucial moment. Although they shouldn't be able to do this. Hello my friends, welcome back to the 4th episode of the Make All Heroes Cry series. Today, we're going to specifically find a solution to every mage that has annoying poking abilities. These heroes have common characteristics: a very long range, short cooldowns and abilities to keep their distance from you. So let's start with the first of these annoying bastards. Number 1. The Nuke Bird, Pharsa. One of my wife's favorite heroes. Pharsa not only excels in the poking department, she can also nuke her enemies into the ground with a single ultimate. It has a gigantic area and absurdly high damage, which makes her one of the most versatile mages, who is capable to deal long-distance bursts. You couldn't possibly get a more complete hero than her. Well, except 𝐾𝐳𝐬𝐽 maybe?
What are you looking at? I'm more complete than you!
Let's take a look at her skills. Passive. Every 8 seconds Vari will assist Pharsa with her next attack on an enemy hero, dealing damage that scales with her magic and the enemy's max HP, and slowing them. Don't get surprised by the sudden slow effect. First skill. Pharsa casts a spell on a targeted area, dealing damage and marking enemies that have been hit. If she hits an enemy with a marker with a basic attack or skill, they will be stunned for 1 second. Second skill. Pharsa releases magic energy in a direction, dealing damage to enemies in the line. Ultimate. Pharsa launches her nukes towards a targeted location, dealing a huge amount of damage after a short delay. She can cast the skill up to 4 times in total. While her ult is active, she can still use her other skills, so don't think you can get close to her that easily. Extra skill. Pharsa turns into mist that surrounds Vari and flies off, leaving you cursing behind. Come back here, you motherfucking bird! Fuck off!
Daddy, chill.
She gains movement speed and can fly over obstacles. Now we learned her skills, so we should be able to understand her weaknesses better. Firstly, Pharsa can't handle burst heroes, especially the ones that can dive into her territory easily, since her ultimate forces her to stay in place while channeling it. If you're going head to head with her in the mid lane, Kagura and Kadita can easily reach her using their skills, and then burst her down in an instant. Secondly, she can't handle heroes that dive deep into her personal space. So picking heroes like Yuzong and Fanny will be very stressful for her. Not only can these two instantly butcher her husband into some KFC chicken, yes, that bird is a husband, both of them are also hard to kill. One have a sturdy, strong and sexy body, no homo, and the other one flies like a mosquito on crack. Thirdly, Pharsa is very weak against interruptions. Her ultimate is a channeling skill, so many CC abilities can interrupt and waste her ultimate. This includes a slight bob from 𝐾𝐽𝐬𝐽 wall or a small knock from a 𝐾𝐳𝐬𝐽 ult. Once her ultimate got wasted, she lost most of her damage. Number 2. The naughtiest child in Cadia Riverland, Changi or Chang'e.
Chang'e.
Though she looks very cute on the outside, don't let yourself be fooled. She's actually a lunatic with a high obsession to steal your blue buff. Armed with a semi-moon machine gun and short skill cooldowns, she's a mage with strong lane management, combined with a long range and slow effects from her skills, and finished with some ice cream one to give you some nightmares. You'll wish tonight's dinner will be rabbit, because this brat along with her pet is pretty annoying to fight on the battlefield. Let's check out her skills to find her counters right away. Passive. Changi's skills will leave stacks on the enemy she hit. Every stack will increase her next skill damage by 2%. So don't be surprised when she suddenly deals more damage. First skill. Changi shoots out energy bolts, dealing damage and slows the enemies. This skill can be enhanced by a second skill, which lets her shoot 4 bolts. This skill is her annoying poking skill, that deals quite some damage, so dodge it whenever you can. Second skill. Changi summons a shield and gains 50% movement speed. This shield will enhance her basic attack, first skill and ultimate until the shield is broken. So poking a shield away will make her much less scary. But don't forget that the cooldown of this skill is quite short. Ultimate. Changi shoots out meteors in a targeted direction. She gains a movement speed bonus and deals 100% extra damage to minion and creeps, so she can quickly steal your precious blue buff. There's nothing too fancy about her skills, but it works perfectly to poke enemies from a distance. Still, There are many weaknesses that counter her. Firstly, Changi is very squishy in the early game. The only thing that can help her to survive in the early game is her shield. And without enough magic power to back it up, her shield can be easily taken down with a single skill. So another hero with poking abilities is recommended to counter her, like the ones we list here. With the shield down, Changi's damage will fall off a lot. This leads us to the next weakness. Secondly, Changi has no real escape abilities. With only a smart shield and movement speed bonuses, she's highly vulnerable when getting ganked. Pick a hero with high ganking powers to bully here from the early game. For example, Selena and 𝐷, or a strong jungler like Ling, 𝐴𝐻𝐻 and Saber. Changi is very dependent on her level and equipments. She's the type of hero that can easily snowball, but struggle to make a comeback once she fell behind in farm. Thirdly, Changi's skills can be easily avoided. There's a short delay on her first skill before reaching the enemies, and to make it worse, her ultimate is a lock-on skill that shoots only in a single direction. Heroes with dash abilities can easily avoid the whole ultimate, and you can also just run left and right to avoid most of her Metroids. As good tank, you can also just cover your squishy allies. Next up we have number 3, the Dragon Simper, Luo Yi. You might think it's weird to include her in the poking heroes list. Her skills are quite short compared to the first two, and her skill damage is pretty mild compared to the rest of today's list. But that's not what makes her so special. Her poking ability comes from her passive, combining yin and yang together and BAM! Instant AoE burst damage on level 2. She's the worst nightmare for every teamfight orientated hero that loves to violate the former social distancing rules. She'll make the group hug even tighter than before, until they are all squeezed to death. To prevent this madness, we need to learn her skills first. Passive. Yuli's skills will mark enemies with a yin or yang mark. Enemies with the opposing mark will attract each other, so they start to cuddle violently, which deals damage and stuns them for 1 second. She gains her shield and movement speed every time she applies a new mark to enemies. First skill. Yuli casts Yin Yang forward and deals damage to an enemy and those behind them. She can store up to 4 charges and recharges them over time, and she also gains 1 charge every time the passive triggers. The Yin Yang state will switch with every cast. Second skill. Luo Yi casts Yin Yang on the targeted location, dealing damage and slowing enemies she hit. The Yin Yang will remain on the field and can trigger the passive when an enemy with the opposite mark runs into it. The Yin Yang state will switch with every cast. Usually, oh my god, this is so hard to say. Usually, Luo Yi players try to have one skill in the Yin state and the other in the Yang state to easily trigger the Yin Yang effect. Ultimate. Luo Yi creates a teleport circle around herself and marks a targeted location. Allied heroes within the circle will be teleported after a 3 seconds decay. Delay. Fuck, because the teleport circle is not visible when it's being casted into a bush, unless you or one of your allies is inside of the bush. Now that we understand her skills, it's time to study her weaknesses. Firstly, Luo Yi is very weak against ambushes. Even though her poking damage is really hurt, her strongest weapon can be her biggest weakness, since she have to move forward to poke her enemies. If she ends up in a bad position, the chance to ambush her is very good. Pick a locking hero like Saber that can instantly delete her. I'm a bit in love with Saber right now, I think I mention him so often. Or Qiao that has a CC immunity dash to charge in safely, and then kick her nice ass to establish gender equality. Wasn't there even a meme that Qiao is forever alone and never gets a girlfriend? Anyway, secondly, Luo Yi's skills are easy to dodge. With a short range and thin hitbox, she have a hard time against dashing enemies, or those who are smart enough to not run headfirst into them. So pick heroes like Hayabusa and Ling that can easily get close to her and escape all damage with their invincible ults. This will waste her skills and make her miss most of her time. Thirdly, she lacks the escape skills. Do you see a pattern here? Yes, it might sound like a copy and paste from the previous heroes, but that's a common weakness for most mages. Her skills are mainly used for poking in teamfights, and the teleportation needs too long to be counted as a real escape skill. Unless you have Winter Trunction available, she's a sitting ducks against charging heroes like Jawhead or Yuzong. Next up we have number 4. Mr. Twilight Sucks Sicilian. He's the only mage that has the capability to carry his team in the late game. He can burst down enemies with a single poke, or at least make them retreat after a single hit. Even tanks will have a hard time to take his damage. So let's take a look at his skills first. so we can figure out his weaknesses later. Passive. Sicilian gains stacks every time his skills hit an enemy. Each stack gives him more max mana and more mana regen. Now, more mana sounds like it's not a big problem for you, but here's the catch. His damage scales with his max mana. So if he keeps collecting stacks non-stop, he will hit you like a truck that sends enemy protagonists into another world. First skill. Sicilian sends a bat to a targeted location, dealing damage to the enemies on the path. Enemies near the landing point will take higher damage, and it gives him an extra stack. While casting, he also gains 30% movement speed for 1 second. In the late game, you don't want to be hit by the bat. Either stay out of his range, or be at least so close that you're only in the path of his skill, and kill him quickly. Second skill. Sicilian summons a pair of claws in the area, pulling enemies into the center and immobilizing them. And he most likely throws his bat on them afterwards. Avoid this at all costs in the late game, because one hit from his second and first skill will take over 50% of your HP away. Ultimate. Sicilian shoots bolts of energy at nearby enemies, dealing damage, slowing them, and heals himself with each hit. He also gains 60% extra movement speed for 1.5 seconds and becomes immune to slow effects. This is his escape skill, which makes it very hard to catch him with any slow effects. Bonus skill. Moonlit Waltz. When Camilla is nearby, he can summon her to get a shield. Camilla can leave Sicilian and gain the same amount of shield, plus deal damage and slow the enemy. Now, let's bully this unfaithful man. Firstly, Sicilian is very weak in the early game. So pick a strong early game hero like Lilia and Selena to bully him non-stop, to prevent that he can start farming stacks that have the power to force enemies into a team fight. Control the flow of the game and keep the pressure high on him. Sicilian will deal a tiny amount of damage when you keep his stacks low. Ganking and zoning him out of his farm is also an option to deny his stacks. Secondly, Sicilian is a mage with a bad rotation. This is actually just a continuation from his first weakness. He needs forever to clear his lane and he can't join any early game ganks. So maximize this weakness by ganking his teammates on the side lanes. Especially if he plays it extra safe and hides inside of his turret. Pick a mid laner with strong ganking abilities like 𝐵𝐿𝐻𝑒n, Kagura, Kadita or Julian, so you can destroy your enemies as soon as you've reached level 4. Keep the snowball going, pressure his whole team, and finish the game as soon as possible by taking down objectives. Don't play around and doing some freestyle moves or camp around. Those things will only help him to reach his full potential. Sicilian is very weak against flanking. Even after he reaches full potential, this guy is still pretty weak in a close combat. Pick a flanker like Saber or Paquito to instantly burst him down. Fourthly, he is very weak against stuns. Although you have a hard time catching him with slows, strong in non-stuns lets you send this vampire back into the grave in no time. Tanks like Atlas and Franco can easily target this guy and give their allies a perfect and easy opportunity to shred this squishy guy apart. Next we have number 5, your alien waifu, Eve. The rival pick for the nuke bird. With the recent adjustment, Eve suffered from the distance nerf, but her ultimate can't be cancelled by CC effects anymore, so there's something to gain from this nerf. Passive. Eve gains stacks every time she hits her first or second skill on enemies. Each stack will give her an extra attack when using her ultimate and a shield bonus. First skill. Eve detonates galactic energy and deals damage to enemies in the targeted area. Enemies hit in the center receive higher damage and it will reduce the skill's cooldown. She also gains movement speed when hitting an enemy. Second skill. Eve summons a crystal, dealing damage to the enemies in the area. She can use the skill again to deal continuously damage and slow the enemies. Ultimate. Eve creates a 5x5 starlight field and gains a shield. She can tap the block for high damage, or slide it to deal continuously damage with a slow effect. Enemies entering or leaving the field will get immobilized once. Eve can't be displaced and the galactic field can't be cancelled by CC effects. One thing that's easy to notice on her skills are her slow and immobilize effects. Her CC abilities are a nightmare for walking heroes. That means though, that Eve's first weakness is her incapability to deal with dashing heroes. With lower range on her ultimate, it makes her much more vulnerable in teamfights. Heroes like Joy and Lancelot can easily wipe the floor with her. Both can manipulate her teammates as a bridge and burst her down mercilessly. Secondly, Eve doesn't have any escape abilities. While she uses her ultimate, she is stuck in one place and is highly vulnerable for flanks. Heroes like Hanzo and Natalia can easily abuse this weakness. Natalia can stab her from behind as long as no one is protecting her, while Hanzo does it better from a safe distance while still ripping her to shreds. Even if she cancels her ultimate to save herself, she can only rely on her battle spell to escape, which is not the best option since battle spell cooldowns took forever to refresh. Now I have one more super important tip for you. Every once in a while you should refresh your basic Mobile Legends knowledge. You should check out the Ultimate Mobile Legends Beginner Guide right now. See you over there!